I'm live. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and today, in the next 30 minutes, we'll be discussing up to date news stories and also talking about continuing our series on the biggest challenges facing the flooring installation industry. So, you don't want to go anywhere. In case you did miss our last show, you can go check that out on our YouTube channel. I was joined by Jim Aaron with the FCEF, and we talked about the labor shortage, causes, and solutions for that. So, definitely go check that out. But we do have an exciting show planned for you today. We've got some great insiders, and we're going to be talking about installer training and why it matters. So remember, at any time you can submit your questions, should you have any, to the number here on the screen. Also, it's in the description of the YouTube link, so you can just check it out there. Send your questions over, and we'll get those answered for you live. For today's insiders, I'm joined by Robert Varden with Advanced Flooring Technology and John McGrath with Install. So we're excited to have both of them. But before we turn there, we want to talk about our In the News segment. This month, I'm joined by Michael Chmielecki with Pro Installer Magazine, and also he's with Flooring Specialist Magazine. So Michael, we're excited to have you on the show.
So much for having me, Seth. Great to be here.
Awesome. So, Michael, I know obviously you're involved in a couple of different publications, and so you kind of have your ear to the ground on a lot of things. Today we are talking about flooring, or I say flooring, it is flooring, but installer training, right? Flooring installer training.
hmm
From your perspective, how is installer training progressing, being viewed in the industry?
Oh, I think it's going amazing. Before COVID, there were steps taken. There were, the Floor Covering Education Foundation really got its footing, and people were making plans. But now it feels like those plans are being put into action. Just in the past, I would say a couple of weeks, I've seen news stories about Install, which you'll be talking with John later about, but they're increasing their apprenticeship programs on the West Coast, and FCEF themselves is partnering with the Building Talent Foundation, which is a coalition of leading home builders, and they're going to share resources, have a job posting page, everything. So it's
Wow.
all these great steps that where I see like going from talk to action, and that's really where it matters. And I'm really seeing the industry stepping up and really wanting to make a difference finally. So that's really
Yeah.
heartening to see.
Okay. Yeah, that is awesome news, and hearing your thoughts on that, your perspective on that is valuable. So, as you mentioned, we will hear from John and Robert here in a little while as well. But outside of installer training, is there anything else going on in the flooring world right now? Articles that you guys have coming up? Anything that we should be aware of that you want to talk about?
Sure, I'd like to highlight. Pro installer is definitely my main gig, but the one I really want to highlight today is Flooring Specialist, which is CFI's member publication. It's a quarterly. And we have some great articles coming out in the spring issue, which should be out in a couple weeks now. One of them I'd like to talk about is Jen Zern. She wrote an article about sort of the journey that people take from joining International Certified Flooring Installers Association, CFI, to becoming certified trainers themselves. And it's just a really cool article because you get to hear from some of the old hats. You get to hear from the days of back when Jim and Jane Walker were ruling the roost and really just magnetizing people to them with their charisma and their installation knowledge. And you get to hear stories about how there would be times when installers would come to these trainings and some wouldn't even know how to read, and how the trainers would work with them very hard and specifically to even read questions back to them on the test that they would have to answer. But like anything they could do to help, and also talking about the women behind the scenes, like Jane Walker, the wives of many of the trainers, how they provide foods, desserts, encouragement, just how everyone comes together as a family. And it was just really really nice article because a lot of the time when I'm writing about or reporting on installation, it's more either from the scarcity of qualified labor or the technical aspects of it. So it was
Right.
really nice to kind of put all that together into like a human story. So I really love that story, and that'll be in the issue. And
Okay.
one more I'd like to highlight that's coming up in the issue is Daniel Gonzalez wrote an article for us on branding and marketing as a flooring contractor and flooring business. And it's really good because it's from a very hands-on perspective. He admits at the beginning, he doesn't have some business degree. He doesn't know anything really. He just kind of just started putting stuff together and like drafting up logos and brainstorming with his staff. And before you knew it, they had a logo that became so recognized that when they're at surfaces, for example, someone comes up to his wife who recognizes just because of the PFS logo on her shirt. Oh, do you know where Daniel is? And she's like, oh, he's actually at a conference we're trying to get to right now. We're just registering. And it just explains and shows firsthand the importance of like building a brand, having a logo. And he said like, and one really eye-opening thing for him, and also just for me personally, was about 3/4 of the way through the story. He talks about when they're at the point now where they're meeting with the local chamber of commerce in their town, and one of the things that the board chair told them was, everybody thinks it's about who you know is how you get ahead. But in this day and age, with all the interconnectivity, with social media, with everything, it's not about who you know; it's about if they know you.
Hmm.
And that really struck a chord with me because it is definitely still about networking and making those connections. But I definitely agree with the way social media is and the way you can just get projects directly on, say, an Instagram, or you can make like a Pinterest mood board for designers, or there's all these different ways to interface with people. And if they can recognize you for your work and for your talent and the way that you present yourself online, that can be a long way towards bridging that gap to getting them to be in your court. Whereas in the past, it was all just kind of word of mouth and handshakes and long meetings. So it was just nice to kind of see like how things have changed, but you still have those old tools behind you to help kind of bridge the gap between not knowing someone, and then them becoming your client. So
Yeah.
those were really the two articles I wanted to highlight because they really opened my eyes too.
Yeah, and those are both upcoming articles that no one has yet been able to read, and those are both found in which of your publications?
It'll bring the spring 2022 edition of Flooring Specialist, which
Perfect.
is CFI's member magazine, and that'll be coming out a couple weeks from now.
Okay. So there you have it. If you want to read either of those articles, go check those out in CFI's The Flooring Specialist Spring Edition. Michael, love it. You could get me talking about branding and marketing, and we could get stuck there for a long time. So, but thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of the show. So,
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
awesome. Well, now let's turn and meet our insiders in just a moment for today's main topic, which is installer training and why it really matters in the industry. Remember, if you do have questions, just you can shoot those in at the number that's going to keep appearing on the screen. First up, let's meet Robert Varden with Advanced Flooring Technology. Robert, thank you for being here.
Hey, Seth. Always great to be here, my friend. Nice jacket, by the way, buddy.
Thank you. I mean, it's spring, right? So you gotta live
It
a little,
is,
right?
it is.
We just had Easter, so maybe I'm a little late on it, but either way. So Robert, really appreciate you being here, and then let's also meet John McGrath quickly with Install. So John, thank you for being here as well.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having me again.
For sure. Yeah, we love having you guys on here. And I think given today's topic, definitely a good choice for us. So Robert and John, both of you guys have spent a majority of your careers dealing with installer training, the importance of it, even if you weren't necessarily, so Robert, even if you weren't necessarily like involved in running training programs, you were always making sure those around you were learning with you and getting skills as well. So we're excited to have you both, but I'm gonna tee a question up to both of you. Robert, I'm gonna start with you. Why are you so invested in installer training?
Seth, I mean, again, my 40 plus years, all of that technically was on the installation side of the business. So seeing all of it firsthand, bringing in individuals into my workroom who said they had the skill sets, and after about 2 hours, you realize they don't. Joining up with CFI early in my career, 20 something years ago, and really seeing firsthand the lack of skills and education. And me personally, I was always one, to be a professional in your trade, regardless of what trade it is or what business or what have you. In my opinion, you need to be at the top of the game if you really want to succeed. And that includes training and education. I mean, it's just hand in hand, in my opinion, with making you successful. So yeah, that was always my commitment, always training within house with my installers was always very important to us. And that's the reason why we went to that first CFI certification that came to town, again, looking for more training and education.
Yeah. So great answer. And John, I'm going to ask you the same thing, and then we'll get into a couple more in-depth questions here. But John, you've spent a lot of years as well as director of install, and so would you mind just sharing a little bit of your perspective on why installer training matters so much to you?
Well, I think the first thing to take into consideration is that good, formal, proper training takes the gamble out of the installation. So whether you're the customer who's making the investment, or you're the installer who's making a living, or you're an employer who's relying on the installation capabilities of the installer, you need to know that the installation is going to be performed, installed correctly the first time. Training is the foundation of it all. Training gives you the techniques, it gives you the why. When you have formal training, you're not learning on the job site, and so you can have it where the proper techniques, the information about the materials, the why of why everything matters, whether it's the environment or the techniques, why it matters, that's explained and taught to you at the training center, but then you get to practice it. And the most importantly, you get to make mistakes without having consequences. We learn best from our mistakes. And so when you're having good, proper, formal training from reliable sources, well, then you can practice it, you can mess it up, you can understand what you did to make it wrong, and then you can do it again. And that way, by the time you get to the job site, everyone knows that you know how to do the job correctly. Yourself, your employer, and the customer.
Yeah. Well, now I love that. Make your mistakes there. It's fine to make mistakes there, but it saves a lot of time and hassle on the job site for sure. And John, before anything else, I want to talk about what's going on in the background of your screen there.
Well, I'm stationed. I've been working out in the Pacific Northwest for a few months now. We're building an install program here. And as we spoke about earlier, with this subject matter, we didn't even have to prepare for it. It's something that's in our blood. Robert and I, everyone here, you wake up, you could have this conversation, with as soon as you open your eyes. We're in the Pacific Northwest. Currently, I'm in Burlington, Washington, and we have an introduction to hardwood flooring installation going on behind us. And so as we build an install program, first thing, we put our money where our mouth is. The first thing we do is we establish the training program. So this is an apprenticeship program that's going on now. And then we build up our installer base, we build up our contractor base, and we engage and we deliver for our customers.
I love that. So Robert, I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned you talk a lot about training as well, and like John said, it's in you guys' blood, right? You can't help but think about it every day when you wake up.
100%.
So, what is it that keeps you wanting to encourage people to jump into training and learn? Is there always new stuff happening? Like, why is it important to continue training and not just get trained once and be done and do it for 30 or 40 years?
Absolutely, John. And again, I mean, if you look at the industry as a whole, and I've been extremely blessed by this industry, and like I said, it's the reason why as I've moved around the industry and doing what I'm doing, I want to try to be in positions where I can give back everything I can, because this industry has blessed me with so much. From the training standpoint, the products themselves, the sundries themselves, I mean, as an adhesive manufacturer, how many unique products have you guys developed over the last 10 years that make our lives easier?
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that come out every day that if you're not staying up on, the education from the manufacturers, because the manufacturers, especially with, we all know about the shortage of raw materials change. Sometimes some of the installation methods may change with some of those products, some of those raw materials. New products are being developed by manufacturers every day, new locking systems I mean, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
But it's not just the product. Even from the tools, Seth. I mean, tool manufacturers are coming up with tools that can make us as installers more efficient, make our jobs go smoother, sometimes even help us do a better job. So if you're not staying up with education on all levels, especially the skill sets, and John said it perfectly, it takes the gamble out of the situation. I love that phrase, John. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And it really does. But if you're going to be a professional in this trade and not continue your education, then shame on you, because it will definitely pay back tenfold. And I can tell you that's what it's done in my career over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely true. Every time that you're learning something there where you're not in the customer's home or in the commercial building or hospital or wherever it is, that's a mistake well learned. So, so John, I guess, as we look and to play off of what Robert was saying, I know that as a manufacturer, we run into people all the time that it's like, we'll talk about some technology that we have and they'll say, well, where was this, 6 months ago or 5 years ago? And we're like, well, we've had it for 8 years. So, it's been around for a while. So yeah, keeping up is definitely important. And something that we value in training programs. John, what kind of emphasis do you guys put on that continuing education, that continued training, and not just on skills, but on materials as well?
Oh, it's invaluable. It's all part of it. If you do the proper installation, but you didn't do the moisture mitigation, or you weren't paying attention to the environment, the temperature and such, it could still fail. Well, the end result's a failure. And so everyone needs to, you need to be, that's the advantage of proper training. That's the why that I was speaking about earlier. Taylor, we're happy, has been an install partner and for over 15 years now. And so we work very closely with our installation clients members, who are the manufacturers. We serve as a distribution system so that the new techniques, the new materials, the new things that we have to pay attention to as far as the installation of the product is disseminated throughout the industry, through our apprenticeships and through our journeymen. Things change all the time. I went through my apprenticeship program and I graduated in 1986. So it's easy to understand that if the only formal knowledge I had about installation was from 1986, then I'd be a poor installer and I'd be that gamble.
Right.
And so things change all the time. So it's important. It's a career. And if you want to look at this career, and we're professionals, any other professional has career-long training. Floor covering requires career-long training. And so while we have our certifications, which are proof that the installer has the skill sets, they've mastered the skill sets prior to showing up on the job site, we also have to have career-long training in order to retain that certification, so that every 4 years the certification is renewed but it's only renewed if you filled up, if you satisfied the requirements of career loan training or journeyman upgrading in order to retain that certification.
Right.
Things change so quickly. Way we estimate it, every 6 months, things change in floor covering installations. So it's invaluable that everyone goes to training every year.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask both of you, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask for a number, and it may be very similar from both of you, but I want both your perspectives. So the number I'm going to ask for is, how many installers do you think there are roughly in the U.S., and then how many trained installers do you think there are? So if we were looking at a percentage, you can give me real numbers or just a percentage, but Robert, let's start with you. Do you have any insight on kind of the scope of how many trained installers there are versus all of the installers?
You know, Seth, I wouldn't have a sense of how many installers there are, because also my definition of installers is going to be very different. There are a lot of bodies out there installing, okay? I don't consider them all installers. If I took, and this may be a generous number, I may be low, but if I took and this is from all my time in the industry and the workrooms and all the groups I've worked with, I think as far as if you took the actual professionals, because I'm going to call them professionals, the professionals that actually seek formal training, I don't know if it's much over 10%. You know, it's very, very unfortunate. And I'm not just saying that the other 90% are bad installers. I'm just saying the other 90% have been installing like this. And some of them may have been doing a great job. But so many of them don't understand the importance, as we've just been talking about, of formalized good training programs. It's just key. What do you think, John?
Yeah, John, similar question.
Now, I just had to couch my answer in that my perspective is primarily in the commercial installations.
Sure.
And when I say commercial installations, I'll also include high-rise residential, but it's not retail floor covering and it's not track work. But in commercial floor covering, I'm estimating, similar to what I'm gonna back up what Brother Robert was saying, is about the professionals, not just the helper who is helping to carry in the carpet or taking out the trash, things like that. The professional installers, I'd say that there are 20,000 in the commercial market, 20,000 across the United States and Canada.
Wow.
And I do that because as far as install, we have little less than 10,000 installers. That's the people that are going to our apprenticeship programs. People are certified. So if we're a little less than 10,000, well, then I would say that, you know, when you add the other professionals, CFI, the painters and such, I'd say we're probably at 20,000 professional installers across the United States and Canada for the commercial market.
Okay. Well, that's a good number, but that's a good, let's call it a starting number. So we have a lot of work to do. So, Robert, I'm gonna ask you real quick. Do you have kind of a list of these training? And John, you're welcome to jump in too. But I know you're representing install. But if someone's looking for training, what options do they have?
They've got a ton of options, Seth, and obviously, you know, great training entities. And granted, there's a lot of manufacturer type specific, you know, whether it's Shernox or whether it's, you know, they can do some great manufacturer specific product training, and they're great programs. But then I think beyond that, you know, of course, you know, on the, we'll call it I can't use the non-organized side. You've got CFI, obviously, which is a phenomenal training entity, does a phenomenal, you know, bunch of training all over the country. And then you've got the groups like, you know, the IUPAT, of course, and then John's group, you know, the install group, all very unique, you know, NWFA, NTCA. They're, again, phenomenal training entities. But, you know, I really almost classify them in two separate categories.
Okay.
You know, I'll speak, you know, from CFI, for instance, which is very much like NWFA and NTCA, in that what we get a hold of are that small percentage of, I'll call them professionals. because they're not involved into a formal program such as the IUPT or install. So really that training is something that they individually seek themselves. Sometimes it might be driven by a retailer that wants them to go through it, but it's something that they pursue themselves. There's nobody telling them they have to be there. So that percentage is so small, Seth. It's so small. And the other thing we don't get is when we're looking at that side of the equation, there again, there's no continuation. So if a guy comes to CFI and he gets certified, he's certified. If he wants to continue his training, maybe he'll find another course somewhere, or he'll do something like that. Now you turn around and you look at the install programs or the IUPAT programs. IUPAT, for instance, I'll let John speak of his own group. Now you're talking a 5-year apprenticeship programs where these guys are going in every quarter, spending an entire week of formalized training and training centers all over the country. It's not costing them anything. It's part of their program. And even after they've gone through that 5-year, there's still specialty programs. So it's not like after 5 years they become a journeyman, and John's the same. They've got programs, but they've got their star programs, whether it be a pattern matching or a unique woven program. But again, the education continues. See, that's what we used to lose in programs that we had with CFI. We have our small core group that are just so professional and so literally they live and breathe, and they've got the heart of CFI like a lot of us do. And they will continue that education, but it's such a small, minute group, as where John and Install and IUP, they've got the funding, they've got the resources, they're able to take those individuals, and they have to, as part of their program, just continue that training pretty much their whole career.
Yeah. Okay. John, anything? We've got about a minute left. Anything quickly to add to that that you would want to put in there?
Yes. Well, first, I'd like to share our website, which is www.installfloors. That's FLOORS.org. That's the best library to learn about install. Training is our foundation, and we can be found almost anywhere across the United States and Canada. So we have 47 markets across the United States and Canada, and we have apprenticeship programs in almost all of them. So if there's a floor coverer out there that wants to have a professional career, we are set up to help them have a professional career, so we can take them from their apprenticeship, or if they're a mechanic, we can bring them in there and they can work with us, and we can provide them with the training and the labor managed collaboration to take them to their career, and they'll have a pension for the rest of their life. So as far as the what's in it for me, we'll provide with the manufacturer, industry-driven, reliable training, certifications, and the career to help them make it for the rest of their life.
Awesome. Well, thank you both, Robert, John. You've given us a lot of good reasons why installer training is important, why it matters, why installers should look at it seriously, take it seriously, and become a part of at least one of these training programs. So, Robert, thank you so much for being here. John, thank you. Pleasure as always to have you both.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Awesome. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I just want to say, again, thank you to our insiders. Thank you to Michael with Pro Installer and Flooring Specialist magazines for joining us today. If you haven't already, I encourage you to go check out our website, download our free mobile app, follow us on social media, check out our tips, short videos that we do on install topics, and as always, tune in every third Tuesday for Tailor Time Live. And remember, at Tailor Adhesives, we're with you every step.